Kath and I have hopefully put something together that's going to be useful for you, but I'd just like to say there's been some great examples in the presentations that we've had before on how well you can engage with community and what a difference that can make. We've got some good news and we've got some bad news though. So the bad news is that we don't have one easy answer for how to engage with small communities. The good news is that we've come up with 10 tips that might help you. Wrong way. Now, there's lots more than this, of course, but Kath and I sort of talked it through, and these were the ones that we thought had been the most helpful for us over, or throughout a number of projects that we worked on. In my experience, community engagement really needs to be a cumulative process, so not something that you decide to do next week. So over a period of time, you need to build up trust and build up relationships with the communities that you want to work with. But I know that's not practical, and sometimes we don't have that luxury of having that time to do that. But if you can meet at least some of these, you're well on the way to engaging your communities effectively. So we've decided we'll just show you a couple of projects that we've worked on. And certainly when I was trying to decide which projects I would choose, there were some that were up there that I thought, oh yeah, I'd be really proud to tell you about those. And I've got one of those. And then there were some, oh yeah, that wasn't too bad. And then there's some, oh, I really don't want to tell you about those. So we've all experienced that. You've probably all heard of Waste to Art. In the Net Waste region, Waste to Art's entered into its 11th year. So it's been a great example of successful community engagement, and especially in our smaller communities. I'm not talking about the Waste to Art project on its own. What we've done over a period of time is build on the success of that project, and that's come about because of feedback from the community and people that get involved in the Waste to Art. So one of those top tips was to link what you want to do as far as linking with the community to something that's already happening. So Waste to Art's offered us that opportunity on many, many occasions. We've been able to link things, or certainly me from an educational perspective, have been able to link with things that were already happening in the community and build on that rather than try and do it ourselves. There's no point rocking in with this fantastic idea under your arm that you think is going to solve everybody's problems if you can't take them along with you and they don't agree that it's a really good idea. So you've got to put your own ideas at the back of your mind to begin with. This project, we have a regional Waste to Art exhibition, and it happens in a different place every year. This particular year it was in Bourke. This is a couple of years ago. OEH came on board with us and they provided us with some funding. But one of the things we've started to do with our Waste to Art more and more is link it in with a whole range of different activities that support the regional exhibition. And they might happen in the weeks leading up to the regional exhibition, they might happen on the day, or in some cases they're even happening after the regional's begun. So this one ticks all 10 of our top 10 tips. And OEH provided the funding, so thank you OEH, that was brilliant. We had some links through OEH with the Brewarrina community, so I met Cheryl, who's the lady in the middle standing very proudly with the long dress. She was the artist that coordinated this project, and the Twin Fishes project, the yellow belly fish is a food source that's been around for a long, long time for Bourke and Brewarrina communities, so it has very special meaning to those communities. So we made 2 giant fish, which started off a couple of metres but ended up 6 metres in length because Cheryl got so carried away. And the framework was made from old screen doors from people from within her community. So her old screen door that had been in the backyard for a while was used. Next door neighbour's old screen door that wasn't any good. And so they built up the framework for these 2 fish. And then Cheryl ran workshops in Brewarrina and Bourke and involved the community in cutting out. So all of the scales on those fish are made up from over 2,000 aluminium cans that were collected from within that community by the community members. And then they cut out tiny little fish, and on those fish they wrote messages. So people that were involved in the project were invited to write their message and then connect it to the chicken wire, which had come from an old chicken coop that was in the backyard of one of Cheryl's community neighbours. And so all these fish, the scales were attached, and they were attached just with one point, so they made this beautiful noise when the wind blew. So that happened in the lead up to the Regional Waste to Art. When we opened the Regional Waste to Art, we invited everybody from the community to come out and have a look, and they would write their messages on these tiny little fish and then attach them to the chicken wire. Then a couple of weeks later, or about a month later, at the end of the regional exhibition, we donated the fish to Brewarrina and Bourke. And so we then had a little celebration. Good one. Can you just... I'll tell you about it while Danielle helps me. So the photos have got a little out of sync, but there's a photo of a young guy here who's about 17 or 18 who was involved in this project. His family lived in Brewarrina at the time, but after the fish had been completed, his family moved away. And on the day that we donated this fish to Brewarrina, he hitchhiked back because it had been so important to him. And look at the look on his face. I mean, this is a really difficult age group to engage with, so I was pretty happy about that. And he was so proud of a piece of paper that was laminated that said, "Good on you, mate, you were part of this project." So I think that was a fairly successful example of community engagement, and it's ongoing. Cheryl now coordinates Waste to Art in Brewarrina. She's running workshops through schools in Brewarrina. I couldn't do that. There's no way I could go in and do that. So having the right people involved and those long-term and maintaining those relationships is really key. Just very briefly, the other project I wanted to mention was one that's just come out of our latest education strategy within the Net Waste region. It's the Village Waste Challenge, Waste Reduction Challenge. So the idea is that we're providing a $6,000 grant, and we've offered that. The successful community is Millthorpe. They want to address a problem with plastic bottles littering their community. And so we're trying to give them some ownership of their problem and the ability to come up with the solutions themselves. And I think that's a pretty unique way of engaging with community. So fingers crossed it goes really well.
Thanks, Sue. And further to that, this is probably a really good wrap-up of ours, because there's quite a few common elements of all the talks here this afternoon about the way that we engage our community and we talk to our community. And one which is particularly close to the example that Pete had was an unmanned open landfill. So one of those common examples. And like Pete, I utilised my relationship with the EPA to assist in talking to the community. But you know what? I did one thing better, Pete. I actually got them to do the PowerPoint presentation. Yeah, which was fantastic. So we did the letters, community meeting, and you know that's what the landfill was. And it used to go up in flames. I think the quote from one of the local EPA officers: "Is there anything left out there to burn?" But this is what we did. So we said to the community, we will give you a waste transfer station, we will give you designated areas that you can put your recycling, a place you can put your waste, and we're going to put a person out there to help you. So yes, we closed the facility, it's opened at 1.5 days a week. We surveyed the community and we went with what the hours that we thought were the most popular. So we, you can't see it there, but the shipping container is, we converted that to the site office and moved that. We created, we've got 2 15-metre skips that get serviced once every 6 to 8 weeks. And they come back to Uralla landfill. But what we have is we have a site that's now clean, the EPA's happy, we're happy, and our staff member out there's got this stash of business cards, you know, for the town planner, for the engineers when they want to come and complain about roads. There's actually a face of council out in this small community. And I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to put a challenge out for all of you to think about some of your biggest critics out there in the community. that, you know, really want to have a go and really want to say, I pay my rates, you know, go to hell. And sometimes, like, Eurella's a small council. We're stuck in the middle of, you know, Armidale and Tamworth, and we're soon to take over Armidale Council. But, you know, there's not a huge waste budget, and you have to do some thinking on your feet. Now, I might also add that the photo there is from the front of the Eurella Landfill and Community Recycling Centre. So we've just got some nice flower beds there and some inspiration for the community to what you can do with old things. So it looks very pretty. But one gentleman arrived at the facility and he wasn't too impressed with the flowers, and he wasn't too impressed that he got told, well, if you don't sort your waste, you're going to get charged. So I happened to be on site. Don't you love it when you just happen to be there when these sort of things happen? And this guy was pretty well swearing, and, you know, he was out there, and then my staff member said, well, hold on a moment, my manager's just over there, how about you go and speak to her? So I had the pleasure of speaking with this gentleman, and he was really abusive, not a happy camper. I've got, you know, 6 kids and all these grandkids, and we don't have time to recycle, rah, rah, rah. And he was pretty abusive. And one more thing I should add as well is that this is not leftover clown paint. I actually broke my nose 2 weeks ago reffing rugby. So I've kind of dealt with some bigger guys. I've dealt with, you know, conflict resolution. So I took it on the chin. I said, thank you very much for your comments, but you're going to have to still pay. So he reluctantly paid, sped off, went back to the office, and I thought, what am I going to do? Do I write in the letter and say, you know, this kind of behaviour is not tolerated, we won't allow you to use our facility, rah, rah, rah. Then my overseer came in to see me and he said, I heard about the run-in out at the landfill. And he said, I'm really concerned because he's known to police, he's a very violent man, and he's not... They actually call him, and I'm going to change the name, Butter Knife Bill. And it's actually because he tried to murder someone with a butter knife. True story. So I was kind of a little bit on edge, and I thought, well, okay, how am I going to do this? But I challenge you to think outside of the square. I thought to myself, I had sort of tried to mention to this guy in between expletives that, you know, you could pre-sort and put it in 44-gallon drums, put the paper in one and the kids could put the glass in the other, and you just bring it to our facility. But anyway, I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to make it easy for him. So I wrote him a letter and said, this is how some people outside of the curbside collection area, which he was, this is how they sort out their recycling. They have a couple of 44-gallon drums, a couple of old bins. They pre-sort it at home, and they bring their recycling in once every couple of weeks, already pre-sorted. It's nice and easy. We can even swap over the old bins or swap over the 44-gallon drums. So I wrote to him with that example and said, you know what, we've got some old bins you can have. And I thought, you know, I may never hear back, but the next week that guy arrived at our site wanting to pick up his old bins. So we gave him that, and we gave him a pack with some colouring in books and some rulers, whatever else for the kids. And do you know what? I get a kind of a wave now. So going back to those top 10 tips, and that's a good example of picking the right person. And I challenge you to pick your loudest critic and turn them into your biggest fan. And that's sometimes what you have to do when you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a marketing company behind you, you don't have a lot of merchandise in the office. You sometimes have to think outside the square and really be personable and friendly and trust your community. Be honest about what you can and what you can't do. And if you're going to do something and you're going to go out to the community and say you're going to do something, go and do it. And if you can't deliver, say that. Just say, well, we can't deliver the Rolls-Royce service because this is all we've got. But look at the top 10 tips. And it was certainly, like Sue and I have, after our discussions, you know, these were the common elements of things that worked well. And if you go back and have a look at some of the things that haven't worked so well, usually it's because maybe you didn't think about some of this. So I also challenge you to go and have a look at your failures, not just because you've written a nice acquittal for the EPA, but go back for yourself again and say, okay, really, why didn't that work? You know, one thing that I hate is those little butts for butt bins. I've still got boxes of those. But, you know, those sorts of things, like have a look, say, well, why didn't that work? and trust your community and